here with my co-host Cody. Cody, how's it going? How did you enjoy the few games in week 0?
I was pretty excited. I liked watching Notre Dame game. I didn't get the Pac-12 network, but you know what? I settled for the ESPN game as well. It was just nice to see some football, man.
Yeah, few good games. Nice to see some real life football, even if it is not even if it is, but it's NCAA. It's not NFL yet. Preseason is pretty much over in the NFL. We're getting ready for week 1 of the regular season, and we're getting ready for week 1 of this college season. We are recording this on Thursday night, so a few games are going on right now, but a big bulk of them will be happening over the weekend. We'll recap the players that we talked about last week that we were looking out for, and then go over a few players that we each like this week for you guys. And mine are not so much under the radar. I'm going to start off week 1 with some chalky picks here, but as the season goes on, I'll definitely have some sleepers and some guys that have built their draft stock as the season goes on. But yeah, we're just going to get you guys basically into the swing of week 1 here, and talk about those guys. But first, let's talk about let's recap week 0 a little bit. So we had those 2 quarterbacks that we were looking out for, Caleb Williams and Sam Hartman. Similar games. I mean, they weren't against each other, 2 different games, but similar. They had similar games on the field for their respective teams. Caleb, 18 of 25 for 278 and 4 touchdowns, no picks. Sam Hartman, 19 of 23, 251, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Not really surprising to me for either of them. They played less than stellar teams on the other side, and just getting their teams off to 1-0 starts and throwing some Heisman numbers together right off the bat. Any thoughts on those quarterbacks?
Yeah, Sam Hartman's getting a lot of praise because he transferred over. But yeah, they both had great games, and Caleb Williams' standard this year is just going to be overhyped. So 18 completions for 278 and 4 touchdowns is expected from him.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only reason why he's not getting as much hype as at the moment. But it was a great game for him. So
yeah, he's gonna stat pad a lot. The USC defense is not really that good, so he's gonna be out there if they do happen to get into a situation where they're just blowing the other team out of the water. Might see the other quarterbacks come in, but that's because Caleb Williams did what he needed to do and get there. So we're gonna be monitoring him all year round. We don't have to really mention him every single week, but we will talk about him if he has big games like this, which I imagine are going to be more often than not. A couple other pair of quarterbacks that kind of went off that we didn't really talk about. Jason Brown of Jackson State, 26 of 30, 356 and 3. And Reese Poffenberger of Albany, 23 of 40, 253 and 4. So some under the radar guys. Might be mentioning Jason Brown's name again throughout the year out there in Jackson State. He had he had a really good game overall, had a couple wide receivers around the 100-yard mark, and just he's not going to be up there with the Mays and the Williams and the Hartmans, but I'm sure we'll probably mention his name again. How did the running backs look to you this week?
Running backs look good. I really liked what I saw from Marshawn Lloyd, like we talked about in with the players we mentioned. He had 9 rushes for 42 yards and a reception for 12. I know their other freshman running back took a pretty big workload as well, and that was Austin Jones. He had 2 touchdowns, so he had a great game too. I think that's a good dynamic punch, and that's just more weapons for Caleb Williams. Some under the radar ones that I didn't see coming and put on a pretty good show was Audric Estime from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He had 95 yards and a touchdown and a few receptions. And then another one, probably the biggest game of the day, was Shamari Lawrence from Florida International, 15 rushes, 139 yards and a touchdown. You can never beat that stat line.
No, I think he was a leading rusher on the week as far as running backs go. 15 for 139 and 1. Yeah, and Audric Estime I actually wanted to bring up last week. He completely missed the show sheet. I forgot about him. I did want to bring him up, but he ended up making it in the players that we didn't mention for the top performers, so good on him. As far as the wide receivers, Caleb Williams had the game that he had, but the his USC wide receivers not really off to a great start right away. I mean, Dorian Singer 4 for 41 and a touchdown, not too bad. I mean, I'm sure he's going to fluctuate throughout the whole year. He's still going to be pretty much a top 10, top 15 drafted wide receiver next year. Mario Williams a little not as well, for 2 for 26 for him. Again, they did a lot on the ground there in USC. Obviously, Caleb had the game that he had 278 and 4. So 3 other touchdowns went 3 other ways outside of Singer. But we're going to see these guys have some big games, and of course they're going to have some not so big games throughout the year. Marshawn Lloyd is actually one of the other one. Oh, no, it's the running back. Sorry, Chris Tyree of Notre Dame, kind of that dual position player. He 3 for 36. We did mention him last week. So I just wanted to bring him up. 3 for 36. Again, not a huge game. The Notre Dame balls seem to have gone other ways too, but he'll be on our list again as the season goes on. We talk about him a little bit. You mentioned a trio of guys: Tyron Smith, Sam Wiggles, and Will Shepherd. Why don't you let us know what they did this week?
Yeah, 2 of them had really good games. The other one had 5 receptions for 38 yards. That was Tyron Smith at UTEP. I still think he's got a good play, but there's some guys on that team that I didn't see coming, like Kelly Akaraye from UTEP. He had 4 receptions for 102 yards and a touchdown. But Sam Wiggles, I expect him to go for 10 receptions for 103 yards. He's, like I said, he came from Ohio State, so he's going to run through that conference. And that's just what he did. And then, of course, Will Shepherd. He was a man amongst boys in his game with Vanderbilt and Hawaii. 6 receptions, 68 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, like I showed you with that first replay, his first touchdown, I don't know what the corner was doing, but you know what? I expect that from a top-tier wide receiver to really fake him out with his core, and he did. So.
And on the other side of that Vanderbilt game for Hawaii, they had a pair of receivers that had some good games. Pofili Ashlock and Stephen McBride. Ashlock had 7 for 127 and 1. McBride had 7 for 98 and 2. So I believe their quarterback only threw the 3 touchdowns. Between the 2 of them, they had all 3. Mark Redmond for San Diego State, 5 for 62 and 2. Jaden Greathouse for Notre Dame, 3 for 68 and 2. Nick Nash for San Jose State, 6 for 89 and 3. So he's your touchdown leader on the year so far. I believe our receptions leader was, who was it? Smoke Harris, 11 for 155 and 1 for Louisiana Tech. So some good wide receiver. I think we're going to be talking about him a little bit more too, Smoke Harris. We're definitely going to see his name a few times in the leaderboard throughout the year. But yeah, I mean, really no tight ends on this list. Not a lot of the tight ends really stuck out. As far as the quarterbacks go, I mean, you had a couple other quarterbacks that threw for 3 touchdowns, but also threw a couple picks here and there. But that's your week 0. Really nice list of players, guys to keep your eyes on. Not just the guys that we brought up last week, but some other guys that came up under the radar. A couple Notre Dame guys, some Hawaii guys now to look out for. So just keep an eye on those guys, and yeah, we'll if we see a good matchup, we'll bring them up and talk about them again as the season goes on. Let's get into the week 1 players that we want to watch. Did we have any crossover at all? Did you have any?
We don't.
No. Okay, perfect.
We're good to go.
Before we get into our personal players that we're looking to watch, I mean, Marvin Harrison is an obvious one. Did you have him? I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
Okay. Yeah, Marvin Harrison is an obvious one. He's not on either of our lists, but if you're watching OSU, you'll definitely see him out there. Why don't you kick us off with your first quarterback, though?
My first quarterback, it's probably a homer pick because I'm a fan of LSU, but it's Jaden Daniels. I'm excited to see what he's going to do this year because last year he really had a good year with a completion percentage of 68.6 and 2,900 yards. Plus, he had 800 yards rushing. Or almost 900 yards, 885 actually with 11 touchdowns. And then his touchdown to interception ratio was top notch at 17 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So I expect a big year from him, and we're going to see him go up against a really good team here with Florida State this week. So it's going to be one of the games to watch.
Yeah, that's gonna be the game to watch. I personally think that's all by itself on Sunday night. So definitely everybody's gonna be tuning in. Get some college football in on Sunday night, the week before we get some NFL football in next Sunday. So my first quarterback is going to be Drake May out of UNC. Again, I told you my list is pretty chalk. There's a very good chance you've heard of a lot of these guys, but at the end of the day, at the end of the year, when we're talking about these guys, it's going to be these guys that performed and are getting picked in the first, second, and third rounds of the NFL draft that we want on our rookie teams. Now, obviously, you might find a late round sleeper that you're drafting just to kind of get ahead of the curve and stuff like that. But for the most part, your rookie drafts are going to be built on a lot of these household names. So Drake May out of UNC, he's at South Carolina. Potential Heisman candidate, potential top 5 NFL draft pick that next year. Going to be back and forth between him and Caleb Williams unless somebody else comes in and has something to say about that. 46 total touchdowns last year, including 7 on the ground. 3 of his games last year were five passing touchdown games. Double-digit rushing attempts in all but 1 game last season. So he's got the wheels on him. He's definitely got the size and the skills to be a successful NFL QB. I'm definitely excited to watch him throughout this whole year. You can watch him on Saturday at 7:30 Eastern on ABC. Did you have the time of the LSU game? I kind of want to just mention those as we go along.
Don't, but I can find it.
I have a couple FSU LSU guys on my list, so I got it right here. That's going to be Sunday the 3rd at 7:30 Eastern on ABC.
Perfect.
All right, and I'll probably mention that again because I got an FSU guy on my list. Do you have another quarterback?
I do. My other quarterback, I think I have a trend here. I like Jalen Daniels from Kansas. I think he could be a sneaky guy to climb up draft boards this year. He got injured last year, and that's why. But his team was undefeated, and he was getting already some talk last year. So last year's stats were 2,000 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and then he had again like almost 500 yards on the ground. So I mean, he had 400 yards on the ground. Sorry, but he's built kind of like Jaden Daniels, and he's just a little bit younger. So I think another year in the system. I really like their coach there. He came from Wisconsin Whitewater, who won like 10 national championships in Division III. So he's a no-nonsense kind of head coach, and you're not going to play quarterback for him unless you know what you're doing. That's why I'm pretty excited to watch him. And actually, their game is tomorrow at 7 p.m., and they're playing Missouri State. So it should be a good pad stat game, but he is really fun to watch. He's just a little shorter, 6 foot, 215, but he's got game.
Yeah. No, and I think we've seen on the past even the few seasons that not so much that you really don't need that prototypical 6'4", 6'5" quarterback size to be successful in the NFL and even be touted as being successful in the NFL with guys like Bryce Young being drafted early and C.J. Stroud not really on the tall side being drafted early. So maybe we do see some of these, I don't want to say small guys, but less than big guys come out and be successful in the NFL. My last quarterback that I got is Michael Penix out of Washington. He's up against Boise State. He has not one but 2 potential top 12 wide receivers for the 2024 NFL draft, so that's just going to help carry him throughout the year. Prior to last season, he transferred over from Indiana, threw for 4,641 yards and 31 touchdowns for the Huskies last year. Not really big in the rushing attempts. He only averaged about 3 rushes per game. But if he needs to, he can move. It's not like that he can't. He's not a statue, but he's just more of just stand back in the pocket and just rip you apart. I think he had a 500-yard game under his belt, a couple 400-yard games. Like I said, those wide receivers that he's got are definitely going to help him. We're going to see him throughout the year just being towards the top of the quarterback board. And he plays Saturday at 3:30 Eastern on ABC. Any more quarterback?
He's going to be good. I think he's a dark horse Heisman candidate for sure.
And he's got some size to him too. I believe he was 6'2", 6'3", 215.
I was actually pretty surprised they came back. I thought he was going to go into the draft last year, but
just going to boost his draft stock.
Yeah, it helps with some people. So my first running back, again, this one's pretty chalk as well, but I'm going to go Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss.
Okay.
Playing Mercer on Saturday at 1 p.m. I mean, this guy is a tank. He's 5'11", 210 pounds, but he's a workhorse back. He had 274 carries, 1,500 yards, and 16 touchdowns last year, and that was with Zach Evans. And Zach Evans is the RB2 right now in LA for the LA Rams. So, I mean, he's going to have nothing but the backfield to him, and he's very, very good. So watch him. If you're going to watch an Ole Miss game, watch him. And then, yeah, he's number 4 as well. So if you see number 4 in the backfield and you just say, why is this guy so explosive? It's because he should be one of the top running backs in the draft this next year.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And speaking of the numbers, I'm glad you said that. I actually wrote mine down. I just didn't forgot to mention them. Drake May is number 10 for UNC. Penix is number 9 for Washington. Did you want to mention your quarterback numbers?
I already deleted them, but I can find them.
Oh, yeah, no problem. All right, while you do that, I'll go into my first running back, Braylon Allen for Wisconsin. He's going up against the UB, the Buffalo Bulls. Big body back, 6'2", 238. Is not really much of a pass catcher, more of just a ground and pound, run it down your throat running back. Over his 24 career games in Wisconsin, he's averaging 17 rushes for 104 yards and a touchdown, and that's on average for 24 games. So he's got some games where he's got 200 yards, got some games where he got 3 touchdowns, but just his average is 17 for 104 and 1. I mean, that's for a 24 game sample. That's crazy. He's my absolute favorite running back in this class. I'm like a kind of like into Wisconsin because I just want to watch him play. Basically, he's going to be fun to watch. He's going to be one of those guys that he could sneak into the end of the first round in next year's draft class. Definitely going to be a day 2 pick, no doubt. I don't think he even makes it out of the second round, but he's a guy that any team gets him. Even if you had he's basically like a Zach Charbonnet for Seattle. Just doesn't really have a lot of a passing game to his resume. But I mean, it's not that he can't. They just like to put the rock in his hand. He just runs it. He plays at Saturday, September 3rd at 3:30 on FS1. And all my times are Eastern. FS1 is the channel that he plays on.
Yeah, so just to follow up, Jaden Daniels is number 5 and Jalen Daniels is number 6. So,
and Braylon Allen is number 0. Sorry.
Yeah. And then my second running back is Raheem Sanders out of Arkansas.
Yeah,
again, he's going to be another one that you're going to hear a lot of. And that's just because of he's another workhorse back, and he's very, very good. 222 carries, 1,400 yards, and 10 touchdowns last year. And that's with KJ Jefferson running the ball as well, right? I mean, you have one of the best rushing quarterbacks in college, and you're still running for 1,400 yards. I'd say that's a good thing. And he's built. He is 6'2", 242 pounds, and they're going up against Western Carolina on Saturday at 12 p.m. on ESPN Plus is all I can see it as. But yeah, he's gonna be fun.
Yeah, definitely fun. I think I have him as my number 3 running back overall. Between him, Blake Corum, and Braylon Allen, those are 3 guys that I'm going to be looking forward to all season. But Blake Corum is not my number 2 not my second running back. I'm actually going to be talking about number 33, Carson Steele from UCLA, going up against Coastal Carolina. He transferred from the MAC to the PAC. He came over from Ball State. He's looking to raise his draft stock. Coming off a 1,556-yard season and 14 touchdowns last year with the Ball State Cardinals. They just fed this kid the rock, and it's going to be smart if UCLA basically does the same thing. I mean, we saw Steele rip off games of 192 yards, 198 yards, and 180 yards in 3 of the last 4 games last season for Ball State. He could be a guy that we're talking about on day 2 of the draft, and basically spending our second-round rookie on him if he goes into the right NFL situation. Again, not as big of a body as the other guys that we mentioned. He's 6 foot 215, but that's kind of like the ideal size that you want. He can catch out of the backfield. Um, Not really high prolific passing numbers, but he definitely has the ability to do it. But just based off those numbers that I just mentioned, he's got some huge game potential, close to 200 yards in 3 of the last 4. And I think there was even another one 2 weeks before the 192 yarder, where not 192 yard game where he went for like 187 or something like that. But yeah, Carson Steele, you could see him if you're up late enough on Saturday at 10:30 Eastern on ESPN.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one to watch again. You want to go first for wide receivers? You want me to keep going?
How many you got?
I got 2 wide receivers as well. So
You can go.
actually, the one that I wanted to talk about first is actually playing right now on the SEC network, and that's Luther Burden for Missouri. He is a sophomore, 5'11", 208, and number 3. Last year, he had 45 receptions for 375 yards and 6 touchdowns. This guy, I love his route running. And, I mean, his quarterback play is not really the best, but he makes his quarterbacks better, and that's really all you want. He reminds me a lot of, I guess, not Zay Flowers, but Zay Flowers' work ethic. You know, he just goes in and does his job and then produces. And actually, for the game tonight, since it's going to be aired probably tomorrow, right at this moment, he's got 6 receptions for 81 yards. That's a 13.5-yard average, along with 30 and 1 carry for 2 yards. So he's already producing. I'm really excited to see what kind of stats he's going to have this upcoming year.
Yeah, little live action update right there for him.
And he's number 3. Sorry.
Number 3? Okay, perfect. My first wide receiver is number 14. You're not going to like this one. It's Johnny Wilson for Florida State going up against LSU. Sunday night, we already mentioned that at 7:30 on ABC. That's basically the primetime game. I don't think there's any other games on at that time. Everybody's going to be watching that if you are a college football fan. This could be the game of the year. Definitely the game of maybe not the game of the year because you still have Ohio State and Michigan and other games like that. But it's definitely going to be one of the top 5 games of the year. I'll say that. Unfortunately, Wilson only went for 3 receptions for 60 yards in their LSU matchup last year. I believe he's one of my only guys that had a previous game against their opponent for that they're playing this year. So I don't have a lot of information on these other guys as far as like what they did against the same opponent. So, but Wilson is one of them. 3 for 60 last year. Early on, I believe it was week 2 or week 3 last year. But we saw him on the field. Last time we saw him on the field, he was 8 receptions for 202 yards to close out the season for FSU this past year. Over the course of the season, you're going to see that I personally have I'll call it a fetish for big-bodied wide receivers. I just love the 6'4", 6'5" type players, guys that just go up and just out-jump you in the back of the end zone. Big wide receiver, quarterback's favorite target. Every year I find one and I follow them along, and this year it's going to be Johnny. And he just happens to be one of the guys that's a top 10 wide receiver. I think we'd be talking about him a little bit more if Marvin Harrison wasn't in this draft. Basically, there's Marvin Harrison, and then there's a tier break. Johnny Wilson is definitely in that next tier after the Harrison tier. But yeah, he's going to be fun. I know you might the homer in you probably doesn't think so, but I know you're probably over there shaking a little bit, wondering how your corners are going to be covering this guy.
They'll be okay, but he can still have a good game. But I mean, he's really good, and like you said, the biggest thing about big body receivers right now is they also have to have good feet and pretty speedy, and he's got that as well because I mean this NFL and this NCAA is totally different than back then. He'd be dominating everyone in 90s ball, but it's just not that anymore. But yeah, he's a really good. I'm excited to see him too. I'm going to go with another similar guy that I have been going with all year, pretty much now with Luther Burden, and that's Xavier Worthy out of Texas. He's number 1. He's 6'1" for 172 pounds, so you can see that I'm kind of in love with those types of receivers. It's a little bit shorter, but they got some prowess. Again, this guy, and you're going to find out real quickly, I love good route runners. Because I think you don't need to be tall, you don't need to be short. As long as you can break away and make someone miss and you're open, that's all I care about. And there's another guy that can do that. Last year was probably a little bit of a disappointing year for him, but I think that was more on his quarterbacks than anything. And I think that's the biggest difference between him and Luther Burden. Luther Burden makes his quarterbacks better. Xavier Worthy right now needed a quarterback to make him produce. So last year he had 60 yards, 760 yards, 60 receptions, and 9 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's still a good year.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's up to his standard. So it might right now. I think he's probably in the 3-4 range, and he wants to get up into the 1 and 2 range in the draft. So I think another year with Quinn at quarterback, I think that'll help him a lot. And their game is on Fox at 2:30 p.m. and they're playing Rice. Texas is.
All right, yeah, Worthy was definitely on my short list. I was kind of back and forth between him and this next guy, number 80 for Clemson, Bo Collins. They are at Duke, and he's only got he's kind of an under the radar guy. He's only got 2 career triple digit yardage games. He's got a career high of 6 receptions in a game. But I'm monitoring him definitely for a junior year breakout and try to raise his draft stock. Clemson, I don't really think they're going to be a pass heavy juggernaut compared to some of these other teams, especially Will Shipley in the backfield there for them. But he should be the top target for the Tigers. He missed a couple of games last year. Not really a great year overall for him. I think he led the team in receiving touchdowns. But you're with a guy like him, you're basically watching him for the stuff that he does, like just without the football and before the football's in his hands. He's not going to be a flashy guy that's going to go over 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns, but he's definitely a guy that with the right season could definitely raise his draft stock. Might be towards the end of your rookie drafts, 3rd, 4th round of your rookie drafts next year, kind of taking a shot on him, kind of like a Keyshawn Butte from LSU for the Pats right now, and it's kind of like how I feel about Bo Collins. They play, and you'll get to see him in prime time by himself. They play Monday on Labor Day at 8:00 Eastern on ESPN. So while you got a couple pops in you and you're finishing up your drafts on the holiday, you could sit back and watch some Clemson football and watch number 80 Bo Collins.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to use the cliche. He does a lot of the stuff that isn't provided in the stat sheet. And, yeah, scouts are going to love Bo Collins for sure. So I'm excited to see how his stock comes to. So to transition to some tight ends, I do have 3, but 2 of them play for the same team, so that's why I picked 3.
All right.
So I'm going to start off with those, if that's all right. The 2 that I'm talking about are Eric All and Luke Lachey out of Iowa. So Eric All is the senior. He's number 83. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. Last season he got hurt, but he was also behind Sam Laporta. So he only had 3 receptions for 36 yards, but he was the other guy on the other side of Sam Laporta, and he did a lot of blocking, so he knows how to do that, but he's also a pretty good receiver. I'm pretty excited to see what he can do. But I'm also worried about, is Luke Lachey going to come in and actually take the Thunder? Because he had 28 receptions for 398 yards and 4 touchdowns already last year as well with Sam Laporta there. And if you've seen me write anything about Sam Laporta this last offseason, their quarterback play last year was atrocious, and Laporta was leading in almost every tight end stat there could be that's not named Brock Bowers. So Laporta was very, very good, and I'm very excited to see him. But Luke Lachey was just as good. He's 6'6", 253. He plays like a 210-pound wide receiver sometimes. But he has the blocking ability because you have to have blocking ability at Iowa. And this is probably biased because I'm from the Midwest, but Iowa produces pro-style tight ends. So one of them is going to get drafted, if not both. And they're probably going to produce at the next level. So keep them on your radar.
I think your analysis could have just ended at they played for Iowa. That was it, because we've seen plenty of tight ends come out of Iowa, Laporta last year.
Yeah, and their game is at 11 o'clock on Saturday, and they're playing Utah State. So
All right. Yeah, those are. I was just in a college football draft. It was a slow draft, lasted maybe a couple of weeks, but um, if, one of the tight ends that I was targeting is one of the ones I'm going to talk about. But he ended up getting drafted way too early, so I was targeting both the Iowa guys, and then they ended up getting drafted too early too. So I didn't end up with any of them, but they were definitely on my fantasy radar for this year. So definitely looking for them to make an impact, and hopefully they don't make that impact against me, but
For sure.
throughout the year they do.
Yep.
All right. Get into my first tight end. Everybody and their mother has heard of him. He's number 19 for Georgia, Brock Bowers. They're up against Tennessee Martin on Saturday at 6 o'clock Eastern on the SEC network. So even if you don't have the SEC network, you're going to be seeing a lot of him this year. Georgia will get a lot of regular televised games and ESPN and stuff like that. So you don't have to necessarily watch him this year, but you're going to be hearing a lot of him throughout the year. If Braylon Allen is my favorite running back in this class, Brock Bowers is my absolute favorite, basically my favorite player in this class. He blocks like George Kittle, catches the ball like Travis Kelce. It's the reason that I've been looking into 2024 picks in even my non-tight end premium leagues. He had over 1,000 scrimmage yards this past year, including 7 catches for 152 yards and a touchdown in the national championship. He's going to be a top 15 real-life NFL draft pick. Maybe not as high as like a Kyle Pitts went a couple years ago, but it really depends on, I guess, which teams are picking up there and how they view him, because every team could use a tight end like him. You could use him as a 6th offensive lineman. You could use him as a big body in the end zone, in the red zone, and just overall, I mean, he's one of the best tight end prospects that we've seen in a long time. I mean, we heard that with Kyle Pitts. I think he's better than Kyle Pitts. I don't think he kind of profiles more like George Kittle. Like I said, he catches like Travis Kelce, but he does the blocking like George Kittle blocks, and Kittle can also catch the ball too. So I mean, you could basically say he comps to Kittle just all together. Which for fantasy, obviously, and this is primarily a fantasy show and a fantasy page that we write for, you don't want your tight end out there blocking. You don't get points for that. But if he's blocking, he's on the field. And if something breaks down, he could go out there and catch a pass under pressure when the quarterback's under pressure. So you want him on the field. That's where the fantasy plays start. And yeah, I mean, there's really not much to say about him. You can go watch highlights. I mean, he's been touted as a top tight end for the past couple of years, and people have just been waiting for the 2024 class for him to come out. So hopefully he does, and he doesn't disappoint and go back to school for another year. But yeah, Brock Bowers, I don't really have much more to say about him. Just watch him on Saturdays, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
I did in my college draft. I didn't reach, but I took him in my first round. So I'm very excited to watch him. And like you said, like everyone wants an athletic tight end that can block, and he's the best of both worlds. So yeah, he's going to be a top 15 pick. He might not go as high as Pitts, but I agree with you as well. He should, because he's everything in a bag of chips.
Could you imagine, like, now KC's not going to pick in the top 10, but they trade down and get him and just like go from Travis Kelce to Brock Bowers and then still have Mahomes for another 15 years?
Yeah, it would be the most Kansas City thing ever, and I would hate it, but I'd also love it at the same time. So
yeah, I mean, you know that you get the production out of him.
Exactly, yep. To go to my next guy, again, he's playing right now, and that was kind of my bad, but I really wanted to talk about him. So I'm going to anyways. That is number 88 for Minnesota. That's Brevin Spann-Ford. This guy is 6'7", 270 pounds. Last year, he had 42 receptions, 497 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he's not Brock Bowers, but man, that guy can block. And when he needs to, he can go out and make a catch. For one, his contested catches are phenomenal because he is really big. He doesn't have that breakaway speed that you want, but he can separate a little bit. Now, that might just be because he's 6'7" and his arm length is probably 7 feet long, so you can really throw it right out on the out route, pretty outside of him, and he can catch it. But I think he's going to be a sneaky pick in the draft. I think he's going to go higher than we expect. It's kind of like, the hype that Darnell Washington was getting this year at the end, I think that might be Brevin Spanforth this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could definitely see it. Got the size of Darnell Washington and Mo Alley Cox and just those big bodies that we'd have to see where he lands, obviously, see where he goes, and he might be, if anything, at the very least, he might be a like a best ball pick.
Yep.
But I mean, obviously, if he gets a consistent role in tight end one role for a team that uses their tight end, or like goes to an LA Chargers and he's connected to Justin Herbert for many years, could definitely be a redraft and dynasty type of player too. But
I saw him as a Seattle Seahawk, and I really liked him there as well. But just to put the bow on it, his live stats right now is 2 receptions for 16 yards. It's always a battle against Nebraska, so I wasn't expecting much. But they also have a new quarterback from Minnesota, so I'm going to be surprised if he actually has the same stats as he did last year, because he had 4 years of freaking Tanner Morgan, because I think Tanner Morgan was there for 12. But so that's the little difference. They're going to have to work that out, but he's going to be around. So I'm pretty excited.
You can't teach size, and that kind of is a good transition to our final player, who is on the opposite side of the size spectrum as him. Number 6 tight end Jaheim Bell for Florida State, another Florida State guy going up against LSU. We already told you that they play Sunday, 7:30 p.m. on ABC. He's a transfer from South Carolina, and he's not really your tight end size, 6'3", 230. He profiles more like of an athletic fullback, kind of like a Kyle Juszczyk for San Francisco. But if he lands in the right situation and he has tight end eligibility on your platform, Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, whatever you use, he could be a cheat code. He's got more career rushing attempts than receptions, but a guy like Trey Benson in the backfield, we could see more in the passing game from Bell. He doesn't really need to rush the ball as much in Florida State with Trey Benson there. He's essentially the 4th, maybe the 5th receiving option in this offense, but I think they're gonna manufacture plays specifically for him as the season goes on. So he might not be consistent. You might not get a whole bunch of targets throughout the year, but there's going to be games where he will, and there's going to be games where there's plays designed specifically for him to get the ball in his hands and do what he does. Again, not the best size that you really want in a tight end. So unless he beefs up a little bit, we could see him more in like a fullback role or switch to like a slot wide receiver at the NFL level. But he's definitely going to be fun to watch throughout this year. And I'm definitely excited to see where he lands in the NFL draft, or if he even goes undrafted and lands on with a team that could definitely use his skill set.
He's the one I'm actually more scared of for on Sunday, because I don't think we have a guy that can match up with him. So, I mean, we can double team the wide receivers and stuff like that, and we feel all right. But, yeah, Jaheim Bell's the one I'm actually more terrified of, because I don't know. He's a mismatch nightmare at the tight end position. Because, yeah, I mean, not with his size or length, but he is just – he's versatile. So you don't know where he's going to line up, and you don't know what he's going to do. He could rush the ball. He can go out for a route. He could block. But, yeah, he's going to be a fun one to watch again as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we just touched on what, 16, 17 guys with the dual tight ends that you mentioned. Yep. And there's loads of games over the weekend. Saturday features over 120 games or so. And so when we come back on next week, we're going to be talking about hopefully our guys that performed, and then we're going to mention some other guys that we didn't mention, some under the radar guys, and kind of just go along as the season goes, and we'll have not really a better list, but we'll have a kind of like the start of our list for our big board going into the 2024 draft, and kind of just update it as the season goes along. So basically, if you're interested with us, just hang out with us throughout the entire season. This is basically how the format of the show is going to be. Like I said, last week was a little different because we didn't have any games to go off of from the previous week. We're not claiming to be your NCAA college football experts that break down every team and every player, but we are just the guys that are going to be here and following you along with the draft eligible players. And so, I mean, if a freshman has a huge game, yeah, we'll mention it for your future leagues. But we're going to be looking at mostly the juniors and the seniors and the draft eligible players, and kind of get you going along with those guys, and hopefully get you ready for your 2024 NFL or 2024 fantasy rookie draft. Anything you want to add before we close it out?
Yeah, we're casual college football fans. We just want to watch football and enjoy it. And when one of those juniors or seniors and draft eligible players goes off, we're going to be excited about it. I know you and I messaged each other, said, "Man, we did pretty good last week with the guys that we showed up," and I mean, we were excited about it. So that's what everyone wants. So, I mean, yeah, you have your diamonds in the roughs and the guys that really go hard into college, but we're just two regular guys with regular lives that we're not going to watch everything that we can, but we're going to see who had the big leagues. That's what we're here for.
Exactly. College football rules your Saturdays. Got a couple Sunday and Monday games this week too, but for the most part, Saturday you turn on almost any station and you're going to find a game. ESPN, ACC Network, SEC Network, Big Ten Network, Pac Network, ABC, your CBS, and all that. So just turn on the TV, see what game is on. Hopefully, a couple of the players that we mentioned are out there that you could keep an eye on. If not, then I'm sure we'll be talking about them in the coming weeks. But for Cody, I am Jerry, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you.